Ça, c'est le traduit. Ça, c'est le traducteur.
Ah oui, bonjour.
Madame, messieurs les photographes, une dernière photo, s'il vous plaît. On est un peu en retard. Il y aura beaucoup de questions.
Ça va être compliqué, je sais pas. Larsen Masca. Ah bah oui, c'est mon gros.
S'il vous plaît, on va être obligé de commencer la conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup. Mesdames, messieurs, je découvre une autorité naturelle que je n'ai pas du tout, mais je vais...
Si, elle est là, elle est là.
En tout cas, elle est dans l'intention, on va dire.
Je t'aide, je vais faire, j'ai beaucoup de force.
À nouveau, bonjour à toutes et bonjour à tous. Donc, bienvenue
Hello,
encore
everybody,
à la
and
conférence de
welcome
presse
to
de
the press
novembre, le nouveau
conference
film
on
de Cédric Jiménez. Je suis très
Novembre
content d'être
by
là.
Cédric
Vous l'êtes
Jiménez.
tout
I'm
autant
very
que je
pleased
le
to be
suis.
here.
Juste avant de commencer le tour de table et de présenter celles et ceux qui nous font
Start, I'd like to introduce all those who have been kind enough
autour de la
to
table.
attend
Je
this
vais
press
saluer
conference.
Stéphane Bach, Raphaël Kénard, Sofiane
Stéphane
Kames
Bach,
et
Sofiane
Sarah
Kames,
Afshan, qui sont
Sarah
comédiens du
Afshan
film et qui sont
are actors
également
in
dans la
the
salle,
film. They're
ainsi
also
que le
in
producteur
the
Hugo
film.
Sélignac et Mathias Ruba.
Also
Voilà.
Matthias Ruba and others.
Et ils méritent vos applaudissements,
And they
comme
deserve
d'ailleurs
your
ceux qui sont à mes
applause,
côtés. Je
just
permettrai
like
tout de même
those who are up
d'avoir une des plus belles
here
tables du cinéma français
on the
aujourd'hui, donc je vais
rostrum.
savourer le moment. On va
We
faire
can
ça dans l'ordre
savor
très
this
simple,
moment.
voilà,
I'll introduce
d'extrémité. Avec
everybody,
Olivier
starting
Demangel,
at
qui est
the
le
far
scénariste
end.
du film, et qui est
Olivier
également celui de
Demangel,
Tirailleurs,
the
qui a ouvert un
screenwriter,
certain regard.
who is also played an active part in Les Tirailleurs. Sami Boutalbali, actor, who's back here in Cannes.
Sandrine
Kimberlin,
meilleur film de Cannes cette année, puisque le Emmanuel Mouret et Novembre.
outstanding films here in Cannes, including November.
Ai-je besoin de présenter
Do I
Jean
need
Dujardin?
to
Oui,
introduce
effectivement,
Jean
comme tout le monde.
Dujardin?
Bonjour, Jean.
Well, I will, like everybody.
Un virtuose de la réalisation, et je
A
pèse mes mots,
virtuoso in terms of directing, Cédric Jiménez.
Elle aussi, elle brille.
She
Attention, avec son
also
costume, mais
is
également le moulant, on voit très
outstanding
bien
and
dans ce
shiny in her costume today. Anaïs Demoustier.
Et c'est peut dire qu'elle est sensationnelle dans le
And
film.
she's quite sensational in the film, Lena Kudry. Thank you for being here. As there are a lot of questions, and I want to be very democratic, even if that's not fully fashionable, I'll ask the first question to Cédric and Olivier as to how this
À mon avis, indispensable.
project came about. It's a very strong film.
Tout ce que nous connaissons de la
How
tragédie.
did you orchestrate what we know about this tragedy and focus in this manner on this inquiry and this race against time? And after you answer this question, I'll give the room the floor.
Donc, Olivier, c'est
Olivier.
la première question. Je vous laisse
The
répondre.
first question is for
Je
you.
vais commencer rapidement pour dire que
I'll be very
j'ai
quick.
initié ce projet en
I
2017.
began this project in
après avoir proposé
2017
le-
after having
ce scénario à Mathias
proposed the
Rubin,
screenplay to
que
Mathias
j'ai développé
Rubin.
tout seul,
I
avec
developed this
l'ambition
all
de
by
réussir
myself.
à
What I wanted to do
raconter
was
ces événements
to
très
tell
traumatisants,
the
mais
tale
sans
of this
jamais,
traumatic event
revenir sur le traumatisme
without
et en racontant
talking
plutôt
about
l'onde
the
de choc,
traumatism
et
itself.
comment, dans
It
un événement
was like
pareil, des services publics se mobilisent. Alors,
a
ça aurait pu être
huge
aussi les
wave
hôpitaux,
which
ça aurait pu
overwhelmed
être
people.
d'autres services,
I
mais en
could
l'occurrence, la
have
police,
showed the hospital,
la
but
société tienne bon.
I wanted to talk
Et ça a
about
été
the
vraiment
police, how important it is for the
ce que
police
je
to do
voulais
its
raconter.
part
Et
so that
ensuite,
society remains
il y a eu
upstanding.
un gros temps de recherche, de
It
lecture,
took a lot of
de
time to
rencontres,
research
pour réussir
the
à raconter
event.
comment ce service
I needed to
fonctionne,
meet people
par où il
to
passe, et
understand
comment
how the
cette
police
enquête s'est menée
departments
de manière
work,
très
how
compliquée.
the inquiry was conducted, because it was very complicated.
Dès le départ.
Là, on ne dérogerait pas là-dessus.
Je trouvais complètement, enfin, à mon sens en tout cas, c'était impudique
In my view,
de les montrer.
it would have been indecent
Que ça aurait
to
été
show
possible dans
certain
d'autres
things that might have been
configurations,
possible
mais moi,
in another
je me disais
setting,
pas qu'on
but
pouvait
I
recréer,
didn't
ces
want to
événements-là.
recreate the actual events and show them in the film.
Il a très bien résumé.
He ably summed up the work that we
Moi, je suis
did.
arrivé sur le projet avec Olivier, en fait. Olivier donc, avait déjà écrit ce scénario. donc c'est vrai que
Olivier had written the screenplay,
que je n'avais jamais fait
and
auparavant.
I indulged in this exercise that I wasn't actually familiar with. When I read the script and I saw the angle used and how dignified things were in the text, I thought, well, I must at all costs make this film. It's a very important one to make. So I placed myself at the service of the project, so to speak. It took a year and a half to actually come to here in Cannes. Well, congratulations. Questions?
Bonjour, monsieur avec le polo rouge. Vous avez bien fait, ça, c'est une bonne idée au premier rang.
Bonjour, Laurent Ganassia de CNews.fr et Radio Shalom. Je voudrais poser une question
I would like to put a question to Lina Kudry, who's exceptional in the film.
Je voudrais savoir comment on
I'd
se
like to know
prépare
how you prepare
personnage pareil
for this kind of a character who's a bit ghost-like, who actually exists in life, but we don't know much about her. And I imagine there was a lot of legal secrecy which was involved and which perhaps made it difficult to prepare for the characters.
Vous êtes servi de quelles informations, de quelle préparation?
What information did you use? How did you prepare for your part? Of course, over and above the screenplay. You're a very enigmatic character in the film. Well, I wanted to be very faithful to this script. Obviously, I had to create the character. I had to invent the person who I've never met. I had to build up the character like I do in other films, where the characters don't actually exist in real life. Here, at least, we had some facts. It's a true story. Obviously, I added things, and we created a lot with Cédric. He, as a director, helped me to put the character together. Thank you. Any other questions?
Bonjour.
Moi, c'est Claudia Aubert, c'est la télé allemande. En fait,
German TV.
En quoi est-ce que ces événements
I'd like
du 13
to know
novembre
why the events on 13th November are such a turning point in the recent history in France. You have a before and an after. And in terms of the previous situation, did you consult former policemen? What did you do?
Je me permettrai de prolonger les questions. Est-ce que les comédiens qui interprètent justement et les comédiens
The actors
vous avez rencontré des gens
who are in the police, did they meet policemen so that they could hear about things and how they actually work in real life? Yes, we did meet people from the specialized police departments.
Bien aussi, d'ailleurs, est venu sur le plateau.
And they even came on the set. We met people from the anti-terrorist squad, from the various departments, and some of them came and attended the various scenes when we were shooting them, and they said, you know, go faster, go more slowly, what have you. So we wanted things to be extremely realistic. We wanted to have the right tempo given the event. Later on, I met the actual woman who I portray. She came to watch one of the takes, and I was deeply impressed by this woman who perhaps I would have liked to really imitate. With Cédric, we created a fairly authoritarian person who didn't appear authoritarian. We didn't try to portray her in this way. She had this natural authority which we wanted to depict on the screen. We invented Heloise. We're talking about a very special police department. It's a very secret department. They're often threatened. And we wanted to show how they go about their work, their profiles, but we changed quite a lot of things. We changed enough things so that they would never be recognized. So it's a sort of a hybrid film. The film is really true because it shows how they go about their work, what their method is. They're very organized. It's like a pyramid. They have to be totally effective and efficient.
parlaient d'effet tunnel.
They talked about the tunnel effect, and they focused just on this. They set their emotions aside, their feelings aside, even if they obviously had feelings, because they're human beings. They were deeply struck by the events, but they had to set aside all their feelings. As you can see in the character portrayed by Jean at the beginning, he had such tremendous responsibility, so he had to remain solely focused on the inquiry, at least up until the end of the first part. And then in the following years, the inquiry became more administrative. So that's what we wanted to show in the film. Now, as to the before and after, the 13th of November, it's an incredibly violent trauma. There were warlike scenes in Paris. France had never experienced this kind of thing. This is a traumatic event that leaves a heavy imprint on people, yet unites people at the same time. Obviously, there's always a before and after when you have such a violently traumatic event. That's an interesting question. Anaïs de Moutier finds it very difficult to manage her feelings. She's obviously involved. She belongs to a different generation from that of Jean Dujardin and his team. How can one rid oneself of these feelings, even if intuition is just very human? It's also interesting to see the way the characters progress and develop. That's what I find deeply interesting in films. The function of the character, the job of the character is very, very important. And in this case, I was this young woman, and I found it very interesting because you have the duties of this person. This person has to shed her feelings and focus entirely on her work, yet she has to draw also on her instincts. I found that fascinating. Yesterday, when I was watching the film, I thought to myself, you really see people looking at themselves, listening to themselves, even if they're very rigorous and methodical. They also have to draw on their intuitions. We can understand that there is a subjective side to these characters, and it's magnificent. It's a race against time. Are there other questions from the room?
C'est ça l'autocratie, ça fait du bien.
Good morning, how are you?
Hello, good morning.
Tim Barrows, Fab UK Magazine. I speak in English, I don't speak French. This question's for Cedric. Did you run into any sort of blocks or any sort of, like, I guess, difficulty making this film based on the sensitivity of the day and people's deaths and the families of the people who passed away? Were there any difficulties in making the film?
In English or in French?
En français, puis je pense que vous avez un casque au cas où.
I can do it in English if you want. French, okay. Non, il n'y a pas eu véritablement, si vous voulez,
if you like,
vraiment gardé le point de vue.
We really kept the viewpoint of those conducting the inquiry. We didn't want to recreate the terrorist attacks or these scenes. You just have the hospital scene, but we made it quite short. We didn't want to focus on things in too intimate a manner. In fact, the scene is there because it was necessary to collect information. We didn't want to call on the victims in any way. We didn't want to rekindle their anguish and their pain. So we had no problems, on the contrary. Of course, we had the problem of bearing huge responsibility. We wanted to be very respectful and humble at the same time. We didn't want to hurt people in any way. We didn't come up against any special problems, apart from the problems that were within ourselves.
Yes. Alors, question suivante, s'il vous plaît. Oui, levez-vous quand vous avez le micro, pardon, parce qu'on est un peu aveuglé. Merci, bonjour madame, a priori.
Oh, sorry.
Vous avez le micro, donc a priori vous avez un indice. It's a clue, you can speak, you have the mic.
Okay, thanks. Cynthia Carina from 3CR Radio in Australia. Thank you very much for making the film. It's a question really for the actors. Early on, Monsieur Dujardin's character, Fred, said to the staff...
Pour l'instant, on a précisé que vous étiez une star. Voilà. Donc,
I'm so French.
I know, je sais.
Vous êtes dans mon pays.
Je suis Cynthia Carena. J'ai habité en Australie.
Welcome, bienvenue.
I live in Australia.
From 3CR Radio in Australia. And thank you for making the film. And my question is really to the actors. Monsieur Dujardin's character, Fred, early in the film, was saying to all the staff, if you're emotionally traumatised by these events, stand down. I'm really curious with the actors, and also I suppose the crew, but with the actors, this trauma happened in your city, in your country. How did you... did that help you or hinder you in making the actual film? It must have been very difficult, I think, to make this film. And I was wondering how you coped with that. Thank you.
c'est une question pour tout le casting.
That's a question for the whole cast.
Tu veux répondre?
Do you want to answer?
Comment on a fait face? Comment on a fait face?
How did we cope with the situation? How did we contend with it?
Je suppose un peu comme
Well, I guess, like the people in the anti-terrorist department, we focused just on the event, this huge ability to work. We were plunged totally deeply into the situation. The idea was to remain very dignified. We had to be rigorous. And this is what we wanted to portray. We couldn't portray anything other than that. We weren't there to make the characters heroes. We weren't there to work on the psychology. We didn't have time. You can sense this in the film. We work as a group, and that's how we viewed our work. Sometimes there were very important moments. I remember the evening when we had the speech by President Hollande. It was a very powerful moment. All the genres got mixed together, and we thought, what on earth are we doing here? And we thought, well, I think we're doing something really good. We're here saying to people that there are all these police departments who are working for us, and it's complicated to be a policeman. Without these people, it would be chaos. These are very powerful moments with a huge impact. All these people are French heroes, so we felt we have tremendous responsibility. We are deeply attached to the screenplay, to the director, to the pace in the film, and we go all out. We're just human. It's an important question. I remember when Cédric offered the film to me, I was a bit reluctant because the events were still very close. Only 7 years had elapsed, and we were all transformed by this horrible occurrence. It's a bit like what Olivier and Cédric were saying earlier on. The only possible stance for me was to plunge into the inquiry. When I read the script, I thought that the film might help me to forget and might help me better to understand. What happened? All these people who conducted this inquiry to protect us all as a population. And I think that this stance, which was adopted in the film, made it all Samy, even necessary, in fact. Samy, you're a different generation. You also know about this terrorist attack. How did you work on the emotions, the memories? How did you work on all this when you had to go about acting your part? What's really powerful in the film, and in particular in the character I portray, is that the event touched us all. It touched a whole country. and even the world, in a sense. We couldn't let ourselves be swept away by the emotions we experienced at the time. When we were on the set, we couldn't get carried away by this. When we were in the hospital or when the president gave his speech, it rekindled all this emotion. We were playing characters who were bigger than we were. We had to portray men and women who were on the front line and who defended the country for 5 days and then for years and years. And every day, even today, they're trying to protect us. We don't even know their names. We never see them. We probably never will. But we felt we had huge responsibility. We had to portray something bigger than we were. It's beautiful. It's interesting. It makes us feel extremely humble. And in that sense, we didn't overact. We didn't try to be too fantastic in this or that scene, go even further. We felt this sense of urgency, the need to be totally faithful to the characters.
Bonjour.
Question from Brazil, from Rodrigo Fonseca, G-Show. This is a question for Jean Dujardin and Cédric Jiménez. I think whenever we watch a movie concerning a special unit trying to catch terrorists, we instantaneously think about heroes and heroism. But I think your film goes far beyond that. I would like to understand what's the concept of heroism possible to a movie like that?
Alors, finalement,
well,
un événement pareil,
when this kind of event happens,
d'abord il y a le choc.
First of all, people are in a state of shock, and then there's a kind of response. These people bear huge responsibility. It's almost inhuman, it's overwhelming. Finding 2 men in the whole of the Paris region without even knowing who they are, that's an impossible mission. They aren't allowed to fail, though, because failure would be new terrorist attacks, more deaths. So in that, they can be viewed as heroes. I didn't want to turn them into heroes. That's not the idea behind the film. And in this kind of circumstance, they're only losers, even if at the end the situation is resolved. Everyone loses. There's so many deaths. The witnesses, well, their lives are upset forever. There are policemen who even resigned after this because it was such a terrible hardship. They focused on this for 5 days. It was a huge shock. The emotion was horrible. They couldn't sleep. And they were afraid that there would be further terrorist attacks. For me, these are not heroes. They're just people who had 5 awful days, terrible days, with huge, huge responsibility. And they all, in one way or another, are damaged. In this kind of event, there's no one who wins. They're just losers. And we're thinking above all about those who lost their lives. There can be no heroes in this kind of a thing. The word hero doesn't fit with the situation at all.
Jean, la question vous était également un peu adressée.
Jean, the question was for you as well.
Mais vous avez droit à un joker, comme dans toute émission.
Non, c'est pas. Non, je vais pas me défiler. Non, mais il a raison, effectivement.
I won't shirk my duty. This was an able summary of the situation. These people aren't really heroes. We're talking not about people, but perhaps about a heroic act. Yes, that perhaps. It's like a pyramid. It's the group which is heroic. The group is heroic. I like that sentence. Hello, and thank you. Congratulations for this film. Question for Cédric and for Olivier. I work in Belgium. Some of the scenes are shot in Molenbeek. It's a very sensitive area, even for us when it comes to our work as reporters. On the Belgian side, there were a lot of mistakes made by the anti-terrorist brigade. Terrorists were able to cross the border. You touch on this in the film. Why did you choose not to talk that much about certain parts of the quest to find the terrorists?
Je commence rapidement sur ce point, tout simplement parce que
l'enjeu
c'était vraiment les 5 jours.
We wanted to focus on the 5 days
Novembre au 18 novembre,
from 13 to 18 November.
Salah Abdeslam, de ce que j'en sais, la police belge, ça traque le temps que
terrorists
en Île-de-France. Donc on l'évoque parce que ça
we're already in France. We touch on the Belgian side because it's part of the plot,
et qu'il est aussi évoqué dans un
but mainly things take place in Paris. That's another side to the tale. In Molenbeek, we didn't have any problems whatsoever. It was just a perfectly normal setting for shooting those scenes in the film. A lot of things happened in Molenbeek. We wanted the film to be very realistic, and we preferred to remain in the area you see in the film, even if we don't actually give the name. Abdeslam was there, and we don't portray the search for this character, because that took place mainly after the first 5 days. The last image is an image of him, because he's one of the last members of this commando who hadn't been arrested, and he still had to be found and tracked. The film finishes by saying the inquiry has only just begun.
Merci beaucoup. Une question.
Thank you very much.
Bonjour, Florencia Ángeles de la W Radio de Colombie.
I come from Colombia, and I have a question for Jean.
On est habitué à vous voir dans des films.
We're accustomed to seeing you in comic films. Why did you choose this character in this film? Also, how did you prepare the scene in Morocco? How did you go about that?
Non, parce que j'ai l'impression que je le fais
Well, I have the impression
20 ans maintenant. Ça toujours alterné, je crois.
I've always alternated between comedy and more serious films for the past 20 years.
Pourquoi je fais ça?
Why am I doing this?
Parce qu'en fait, non, parce que je n'ai pas d'emploi, je n'ai pas de compte. Enfin, c'est pas un contre-emploi, c'est mon emploi d'essayer de faire.
Because it's my job to do lots of different things. I don't know whether I am successful, but I like to experience new emotions each time round. The script was very good, and I read scripts like a spectator and say to myself, "This is a film I'd like to see."
Je rencontre le metteur en scène, en l'occurrence.
And then I go and meet the director. We already knew each other because we did La French, the connection together.
Et son sang, et ça,
And
c'est ce qu'on attend.
we have very close bonds.
Et voilà, je préfère faire un film aussi comme ça plutôt qu'une.
I like to make this kind of film compared with a bad comedy, for example.
L'arabe.
As to Arabic,
j'avais déjà effectivement appris l'arabe pour OSS.
I already learned Arabic for OSS, so
ça colle encore.
my Arabic was still okay.
Si vous voulez.
I can even speak now in Arabic if you want.
Ne les tentez pas.
No, don't try.
Je serai à Mulhouse le 27 et à Strasbourg le 28.
Mulhouse on the 27th, Strasbourg on the 28th. No, I really love learning.
Dans ce métier.
That's what's so wonderful about this profession. I have good coaches,
Faire l'illusion.
and I try to pretend.
Non, nous avons tourné pas au Maroc, à Athènes. À Athènes.
And we shot a bit in Morocco, well, in Athens.
Gérard Chargé, Cinézoom. C'est une question pour
I have a question for Cedric. I'd like to know, as a director, when you deal with this kind of topic, technically speaking, we know you're a director who likes action, you like to portray this kind of thing, but do you approach things differently when you depict this kind of event?
Alors, ça continue à nous ressembler.
Well, this film is like some of my other ones, too. I wanted to adopt a very humble approach. be very sober in what I portray. I didn't want to sort of stand above the subject. I wanted to remain very simple while keeping the right pace and this total immersion in events while remaining humble. I didn't want their things to be overly emphatic. That felt very important to me. You have this interrogation, and then you sort of put the cameras down, and things appear totally tragic. That's a magnificent scene. You change grammar, so to speak, and it's a pivotal scene. Anaïs and Jérémy create this sort of triangle, which is so splendid.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, je suis Asaba, je suis journaliste pour Forbes, France. Merci
A question from France. Thank you for this film. I have a question for everybody. Earlier on, Sandrine Kiberlin said this is a film you'll never forget. Did you want to pay tribute to all these professions which are less well known or appreciated today? And how did these people view the film? Well, of course. Paying tribute is a very strong term, but I certainly wanted to show people what work was being done out in the limelight, in the shadows. All these people do really important jobs. They haven't yet seen the film. You're the first people to have been able to see it. It was the first official screening yesterday, so I'll be able to give you an answer in a couple of weeks' time. That was a question for everyone. Would some of you like to answer as well?
Trop souvent conspué dès qu'il y a un petit dérapage, mais trop d'amalgame. C'était important, effectivement.
I think indeed it was very important to depict this kind of situation. We always make mistakes. When you talk about the police and these government services, what we do is follow the facts. That's what Cedric was saying. He wanted things to be very true to what actually occurred. Obviously, there are some mistakes that transpire in the film, but what you really note is the huge involvement of all concerned. The film stands at the heart of this inquiry, and all the characters make this their priority. The woman I play talks about this often. She says, I have no private life left. It's a passion, it's a vocation. It's like a surgeon saving lives.
Donc, on peut aussi parler de ce qui
est
positif et fort pour la société
and what's really important for society, because these people protect us, and their jobs are not well known, and they deserve to be better known.
Oui, bien sûr.
Non, pour rebondir sur ce que dit Sandrine.
I want to react to what Sandrine was saying. What I discovered when I was making the film was that portraying people with this total commitment is fantastic. They're pursuing an ideal for the sake of society. They become personally 100% engaged and involved, and I think that's wonderful. What I saw in this character was how dedicated she was to her work. Samy?
C'est important aussi. Vous incarnez une autre génération, une autre France.
You're a different generation, a different France. That's important because the diversity lies at the heart of the film too. After the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attacks, the police thought about including more young people, people from different walks of life. Is that important in this project? When I read the script, at the beginning, I felt a bit afraid because of the topic, because of my origins. I was a bit afraid when I discovered the part I was supposed to play. What was it?
Et je trouve qu'il le montre très bien. Il y a
he
aucun
does
moment où
show things in a very realistic light.
jeune garçon d'origine
As a
arabe, j'ai le
young
sentiment d'être
man
un flic
of
arabe,
Arab origin, I felt I was an Arab policeman.
de ce service.
What's important, and what you see in the film, is the teamwork. Nothing hinges on the color of one's skin.
C'est-à-dire que c'est
In this special department, you have a group of people who are there out of a sense of vocation. Their aim is really to protect the country.
entièrement leur être au service de.
And they place their whole being in service of this cause. I found that incredible to be able to portray this. I never had the feeling I was there for a given reason.
De pouvoir avoir une chance de servir.
I felt very fortunate to be able to be part of the group and to be of service to the plot. After you talked about the attack on Charlie Hebdo. The anti-terrorist squad had an important role to play. Yes, after these initial attacks, they recruited more broadly and got special training. In 2015, a lot of progress was made. But on the 13th of November, they really became better known, and young people discovered them. They had to react really quickly, the new recruits had to learn new methods, and they had to obey their officers. So basically, the tale, the story is inspired by real events in 2015. You have the character of Anaïs and different characters who have to compare their experiences, and that's part of the plot. Yes, there's not much difference in age. No, I wasn't talking about age, Sandrine. Another question?
C'est la dernière.
C'est la dernière.
The last.
Théorie Breton pour les inrecuptibles. Ma question s'adresse à Cédric Jiménez.
I have a question for Cédric Jiménez.
Les débats occasionnés par Bac Nord ont
Bac Nord and the debates about Bac Nord may have changed you in a way, and did that help you with this new film? Also, could you explain the choice you made when not giving the role to an actor we know better, perhaps, who therefore didn't appear on the screen? I was making the film before the release of Bac Nord. The debates began in mid-July, and I finished the film at the beginning of August. I didn't make the film thinking about what people might believe or say. Some people attacked me, and I felt this was very out of place. I make films because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in the subject, and I believe it's important, and I feel it's important to make these films. I wake up every morning and go to sleep each night thinking about my films. That's my life. I'm not trying to please anybody, even if you would rather please people than displease them, of course. I make films because I just love doing that. Now, Abaoud, well, they never saw him during those 5 days. The only time they saw him is in a video. That's the only image they have. Otherwise, they've never seen him. They're looking for a man whose face they've never seen. They don't even know his identity. And then the anti-terrorist squad never actually saw the person. And because I've adopted the point of view of this anti-terrorist squad, I never show this person on the screen. Thank you. Is there any last question? No? One more question. One hand going up.
Serge
Belège, I'd like to know whether the fact that the film is being released at the same time the actual court case is taking place, does this have an impact? Well, the film and the court case, fortunately, are two totally different things. The film tells the story of 5 days. The inquiry lasted 4.5 to 5 years. What you see in the film is not even 1/10 of what you have in the legal proceedings.
quand le film sortira. Donc,
the trial will probably have finished before the film is released as well.
Non, mais je pense que non aussi. Olivier, tu as un truc.
So there isn't much of a link there. I think the trial will have finished in July.
Les plaidoiries ont lieu actuellement.
Voilà.
Donc, effectivement.
The lawyers are doing their work now, making their statements, and we'll soon have the verdict. And these 5 days are just those 5 days. That's not what the trial is all about.
Oui, c'est une infime partie de.
It's only a tiny portion of the trial.
Oui.
Le film sort en novembre, hein, si mes souvenirs sont bons.
Début octobre.
Beginning October is the date when the film will be released. I think, unfortunately, we now have to wind up, and I'd like to thank you all for being here. Cédric, Sandrine, Anaïs, Lina, Jean, thank you very much for being here this morning.
Merci à tous et bonne suite de festival.